Hello everybody, my name is Anne Teato and welcome to the Psychic Matters podcast, episode number 47. I am absolutely thrilled to say we have reached number 5 in the podcast charts over in Hungary. Huge thanks to all our Hungarian listeners. Köszönöm, köszönöm, köszönöm. If you are loving these podcasts, please do consider supporting me in my sterling efforts to get them made and produced for you every couple of weeks. It is a lot of work. Each episode takes me 4 working days to create for you. 4 days, and I'm trying to work full time as well. My family are getting fed up because they never see me. I'm always holed up inside the Psychic Matters studio. So help me to see my family again. I've forgotten what they look like and they're only in the living room. Consider becoming a patron. Head over to patreon.com/Psychic Matters and you will see all the benefits and bonuses of becoming a patron. I really could use a few more patrons because I currently transcribe every episode word for word and it is taking me literally days. So I'd love to be able to pay for a bi-monthly transcription service to free up my time. So if you are learning a lot from these podcasts and enjoying absorbing all the incredible knowledge from my wonderful guests, and you can afford a spare £5 or more a month, that would definitely go some way towards helping me get my episodes professionally transcribed. Meanwhile, let's get back to this week's fascinating episode on spirit portrait art. Settle back, get a coffee. You are going to love it. We are very lucky to have with us today Spiritualist medium DSNU, spirit portrait artist, and appointed Arthur Findlay College tutor, Anne-Marie Bond. Anne, welcome to Psychic Matters.
Thank you, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so grateful to you. We all are for making time in your really hectic schedule to come and talk to us today, because I know that your diary is jam-packed with appointments. So thank you so much for your time. And you do something very unusual, which we haven't covered yet in this podcast, which is spirit portrait art.
Yes.
And tell us what that is, if you could explain, because a lot of people won't have even heard of that before.
Absolutely. Spirit portraiture is the visual representation on paper of a face of the spirit communicator as they were in the physical body. So it's a form of mediumship where the spirit artist will attune and perceive the presence of the spirit communicator, and through that blend, they will be able to draw the facial features of how the recipient or the loved ones would have remembered that person. And it can vary according to the development of the spirit artists in their own understanding of what it actually is, and their attunement of understanding that really the process is automatic. So once you've blended with that spirit communicator, the idea is to not to put yourself in what you deem the face should look like, but allow through feeling, thought, and your senses and your perception to understand that the communication via the drawing is through the separate intelligence of that spirit communicator.
Wow, that sounds just a beautiful way to work. When you say we should attune, or the spirit artist attunes and perceives the presence of the spirit communicator, can you say how you perceive and how you...
Well, our perception is based through the clairs, through the clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience. And what we do is, we have our 5 senses, don't we? So, but what we do with the perception is to become aware that the communicator is there, and that happens with your development, your ability to attune, to understand how to use those clear senses. And once you have understood that or learnt and developed it, what you do is, through the perception, the understanding that a communicator is drawing close. I'm understanding that I've got a gentleman here. he makes me feel this way, or shows me this information. And whilst you are perhaps verbalizing that information, your hand is actually drawing at the same time. And so where you have a medium on platform who will demonstrate just the mental mediumship, the spirit artist has to give the mental mediumship, but also the drawing as well as not the proof. The medium cannot prove anything. What the medium can do is offer information, and it's the recipient's job to receive that information, understand that information is of what they know, what they've known to be true about their loved one.
And so how did you begin to work in this way, Anne-Marie? Take us back a little bit, perhaps, as to how you became a medium in the first place.
How long have you got? I don't think we've got it long enough for this podcast. How did I start? Well, I can say this. I've always had an interest in life after life, if you like, from a young child. And I've always drawn. I've always liked to draw as a child, as children do, give them a pencil. But I always used to draw eyes when I was younger. And through that, I just doodled like children. I didn't think anything of it, to be honest with you. And I think around my late teens is when I started to want to adopt this skill, this art skill, to be able to draw the faces of spirit. But I was untrained. I didn't have anyone to teach me. So it was a case of, who did I have but spirit? So I would sit with spirit and then they would train me. So they literally are my trainers when it comes to where I am now in my art. When I look back at my artwork is no different than any person I see that's starting out right now. It's no different than anyone who feels they look at their artwork and think, oh, I've drawn an alien head. Oh, the eyes are too close. The eyes are too far apart and the proportions are not right. I had the same thing, that 2D face, that the proportions could have been better. Most people have problems drawing noses, you see, and I was one of them. But then to take my development to a place of becoming more in depth in it, I would sit with spirit at midnight. I would sit with them at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would sit with them in the afternoon. When I felt that calling to draw, I would sit at my table, set that intention and draw. And I always say to my students, there's many people in the spirit world who are ready and willing to help students. And that drawing may not necessarily be for a specific recipient. It may be that they are there to whisper to them, whisper and kiss their thoughts. I was like this. I am like that. You're doing right. Make this a bit wider. And it helps those people in training in the spirit world as well. So perhaps someone like myself, and there's many people at my level and above where I am at as well, who are able to attune to that information and draw more precisely. And so on my journey, I would sit with spirit a lot and draw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of drawings. But I was always able, when I was younger, to draw. I'm a copy artist, so I can, whatever I see with my physical eyes, I can draw it, no matter how big, no matter how small. I've always had that ability. Wow. And I used to love drawing cartoon characters, so I could get a magazine and freehand. I've always been a freehand artist, so I would sit there and I would draw cartoon characters really, really small, and then I would draw them on the wall. Well, I got in trouble a lot of times. I would draw them on the wall quite large. And I remember a time when my parents were moving house, and in the new home where the walls hadn't been painted, I said, can I draw here? And they said, yes. So I used to practice drawing there as well. And the idea is I would only use one pencil. And I tell my students that all the time. Too often people starting to work as student medium artists, they want to use a range of the pastels, then they want to use this and they want to use that. Have one pencil, I know this is not a right term, but I will say it, become attuned with that one pencil, work with that one pencil, know how to darken, how to shade with that pencil, know how to draw lighter with that pencil. Because if you can learn the skill in one pencil, then you will be able to learn the other skills that's needed. But of course, this is just my opinion. And so what I used to do is I used to practice a lot until such point where I felt then, okay, I can now progress to pastels, and which I did. And then I would draw in charcoal, and I draw A3 size. I can draw 1 inch by 1 inch faces. I can draw A3, A1, A2 size faces. And again, it's all about the speed of drawing as well. So there's so much involved into it. So I hope that answers your question.
Gosh, it sounds like you were a born artist.
Oh, that's really interesting. Actually, that's quite beautiful to hear, actually, because I would never have said that. But hearing it, and I feel like where I am now with my development in art, and of course, I have a lot of people congratulating me on my artwork. I feel that I could not live without art. I could not live without my art. Every morning I still allow people from the spirit world to practice with me. So I'm constantly drawing faces, but the artwork that I do is so varied. And I will say this, I will share a story with you. I remember it being at my day job, and it was a Friday, and I kept hearing spirits' voices. You need to use oils now. You need to use oils. And that thought kept going in my head again and again. I was like, I can't use oils. So I was like a stubborn child. I can't use oils, spirit, because I would speak to them aloud, you see. They speak in my head, but I speak aloud. I can't work in oils, spirit. I don't know the first thing to do. You've got to use all sorts of different mediums in order to be able to work with it. And they said, trust us, you need to work in oils. So like everything they give me to do, I always take my time on it. So I took 2 weeks. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I bought a canvas and I bought some oil paint. I thought, well, if I'm going to go in, I might as well go hard. And so I bought some expensive oil paints and away I went. And I sat down and said, right, what would you like to do? So I just allowed that free flow. And the first portrait I've done, I always said, I want to keep that. Because when I look at that now to what I can do now, it's completely different. But we've all got to start somewhere, right? And that's something I always say to people. Don't compare yourself to what you see of others and their skill now, because they all had to start somewhere too. And so from using the oils, I've been able to paint beautiful pictures with them. But I know it's hard to say. For me, it's hard to say I'm an artist, because for many years, I would always say I can't draw for toffee. And I still feel that way. Isn't that weird that I still feel that way? I still feel I cannot draw for toffee. If you asked me to draw something, I'd start panicking. Oh, I don't know if I can do it. That would be my first thought. But when I sit in that power with spirit, when I know I'm sitting there with a canvas, or I'm sitting there to do some form of art, and I draw in on that power of spirit, then away I go.
Where do you think that comes from? That thought that many of us, I'm sure, listening, well, certainly I do, and probably people listening have, that I cannot draw. Where does it come from? For you, where does that come from?
That's a good question. I think that it comes from a place of never having my art recognised by my parents. I think that's where a lot of our issues stem from, not having that praise and that recognition. If the people the people closest to you, your guardians, cannot see anything in you, cannot recognize that beauty. Or maybe they recognize it, but they may not know what to do with it. But I feel it stemmed from there, because you look to your guardians for, am I good enough? Am I okay? And you do a drawing and you show them, and it might not be a Picasso, it might not be a Rembrandt, but if you can see something and you say nothing, then someone like myself will just put it down and believe that I have nothing. For many years, I stopped doing psychic art, spirit art. I stopped doing that for a really long time because I believed that I don't have it. And all I can say is, through the power of spirit, listening to them encouraged me, gave me the belief, gave me the understanding. And sometimes I look at my own drawings and I think, how on earth did I do that? And that sounds really weird, because I have that thought. There's still always that niggling doubt, is this good enough? But this is human nature. And I guess it's part of me never wanting to become complacent, always wanting to strive to learn more. How can I be better? How can I be better for the spirit world? And so when I'm teaching other people, I'm trying to teach them to work on their individuality and work on the naturalness of their art and their own communication with spirit, you know?
You, therefore, have become the guardian, you've become the parent and the encourager for the students that come to you, because
Yes.
I'm sure many, many people out there have had that discouragement or lack
Yes.
of acknowledgement, I suppose, which is a beautiful thing. And you speak about your spirit team, your spirit people talking to you in your head. How do you know? Because people will be listening, they'll be possibly asking the question, how do you know that's coming from spirit and not your conscious mind?
Oh, that's a good question. This could be broken down over time, but I'm going to try and find the easiest answer. One, because I know, but I would say I spent 2 years at the beginning of my development of mediumship asking that same question every day. How do I know it's spirit and not my own mind? For 2 years. And in those 2 years, I was actually developing at the Arthur Findlay College. And every time I'd go to a course, I'd always ask the question, but how do I know it's not my own mind? Well, you know it's not your own mind when you're given information that you wouldn't come up with, and you give that information out, and then you realize that actually that's come from somewhere else. It hadn't come from you. I'll give you 2 examples. One being, I remember from the platform in Eltham Church once, and there was a Nigerian lady that I was bringing forward a communication for her. And at the very end, I was shown a mouthpiece, you know, the mouthpiece organ. And in my mind, if you'd said, who would I normally give that to? I would give that to a granddad with a flat cap. You know, my mind can make up and could picture this granddad maybe with a walking stick and, you know, going along the path and blowing his mouth organ. That's my mind. So when I was finishing off and this person in the spirit world was saying, tell her about the mouth organ, the mouthpiece. And for a moment, I battled that and I thought, I'm going to give it anyway. And I gave it to the lady. She goes, oh my God, I've just bought one because I like to play the mouthpiece. And she related it to family in the past, in the spirit also as well. So something like that gave me the understanding that the way information comes in my mind, how it comes in, learning how it comes in, how to process that, whether it's you or not. Another aspect, the second point I will just quickly point out, how I first became aware of spirit. I remember driving in my car and it was a Sunday. I was going to the hairdressers and I became aware of a presence on my left-hand side. Now, this is way before Arthur Findlay days. This is like even before I actually was settled in a circle. And I became aware of this presence in the driver, in the passenger seat. And in my head, I said, hello, who's there? And the voice came back, hello. And I said, oh, what's your name? So I was being a little bit, cocky there. And I said, what's your name? And the voice said, Marcus. And at that moment, I was like, right, this is just you, Anne. This is in your head having a conversation. So I said, right, if this is not in my head and you are a real person, tell me something about today that I can't possibly know. And the voice said, your hairdresser, Dion's left. And at that moment, I thought that's rubbish because I'm actually driving to the hairdressers. Do you see what I mean? I've made an appointment with her. I'm going. So I said, oh, Anne, you're just making this up. I got to the hairdressers. The owner of the hair shop had opened up. Her name's Flo. And I remember sitting down and just looking around the room and looked at this lady who was doing someone's hair. And at that moment, she turned around. She goes, oh, by the way, Dion's left. And I sat there with my jaw wide open, like my mouth wide open. And from that moment, I said to them, you've got my attention. And that went on. There's many cases, I was working on some phone lines, and I said, right, before the next call, what's the information? They'd give me the information. The call would come through. They would give me the name, got the name Lisa. And the lady that came through's name was Lisa. Lots of different things I could say. So after a number of times of this communication in my mind, you then begin to learn what's yours and what's not. So it takes time. And I think this is the problem students have. They want to get to this end point, but there has to be a journey and a process of you understanding what's you. Because we've all got an imagination. We can all do a once upon a time story, can't we? But the idea is to understand your relationship with your spirit team and to understand when they are near you, when they are communicating with you, and how that's done. And that can only happen through progression and through development and through the understanding, allowing the ego not to speak because the ego wants you to say something so that you look good. And so for myself, that's how it developed. So when I was standing in my workplace and the voices said to me that you need to start working with the oil paints, I knew that wasn't of me because that's nothing that I wanted to do. I didn't want to go and work with oil paints. It was the last thing that I wanted to do. Messy, takes forever. You've got to learn thick over lean or lean over thick. So you've got to learn all sorts of different things with these mediums. And at that time, I had no intention. So knowing what I can do now, yes, it is spirit, because I've listened to them and they have more faith in me than I have in myself.
That's so beautifully explained. Thank you, Anne, for going through that.
Thank you.
So at what point then along our development, our spiritual path, is a good point, a good time to start doing spirit art?
Anytime. You can start from the moment you can pick up a pencil and you have the right intention, you can start spirit art at any time. I know there are many mediums, brilliant working mediums, who would love to do spirit art, but their first line is, well, I can't draw. So they discount themselves from that pathway because the fear of they can't draw. What they're doing is they're looking at people like myself or other people who draw very well, and they're comparing themselves, but you're comparing yourself at your beginning level to my 10, 15 years level. And so that's where the problem lies. And I try to tell people, we all have to start somewhere. So even if it's a circle, even if it's 2 dots and a straight line, and even if you let your inner child out and that inner child draws like a 3-year-old, then so be it. Viva la pencil. You've got to allow yourself the freedom and the permission to know you don't have to be perfect from the very beginning. And so you can start at any time. But what I would say is just guidance and advice, because I see this happening a lot recently. Try to avoid going public too soon, because someone will do it for a month. They've drawn a few pictures, and they want to then When their excitement and their enthusiasm of what they've been able to do, they then want to go public. And I feel that sometimes it may be better to work behind the curtains, to culture, to nurture, to understand, to attune, to develop, allow yourself to develop with the spirit world. And then one day, open those curtains and showcase your work. And that may be a year, 2 years, 5 years, but stay behind the scenes and nurture. You know, if somebody said to me, if I had to put it down in how many drawings before someone steps up, I would say do 200 drawings before you would even consider sitting for the public. 200 drawings that through those drawings, you have become stronger. You've seen the progression. So you're not drawing how you did in the first 50. You can see that progression. And then as you start to work behind the scenes with maybe some friends or friends of friends, start to build up a portfolio of before and after. For example, you've done your drawing, perhaps they have a photograph that you can put beside your drawing to really compare it and know that, does it really look like this person? Or is it a representation of a drawing that could look like multiple people? Because that's what a lot of people do. So we've really got to work behind the scenes before we go public. That's what I feel. Because there's many reasons why someone will say they can't understand that portrait. It may be that the drawing is not strong enough in the facial features and facial proportions for them to understand. It may be that the drawing is done when the communicator wants to show when they were younger, when they were at their best, and maybe that person hadn't met them when they were younger. There's all sorts of different variables into it, but we must all have a moral code within us that to do a spirit portrait, you have a huge responsibility. But if you work with spirit, if you work with that one pencil and you do it on a regular basis, commitment, perseverance is the key, is the way forward. Too often we stop just before success. Too often we give up. But what we must do is never give up on spirit, because they never give up on us.
Yeah, I think we do give up, don't we? If I start to draw a face, I might do 2 fairly okay eyes, maybe even get the nose, who knows? But then you'll draw some wonky old chin and the bad hairline, and then I just put a line through it like, oh, this is terrible. Yeah. And you forget about it, and then you're just like, oh, this is not for me. Whereas you're encouraging us to just work through that. That's okay. Leave that to one side.
Absolutely. Work through it. You know, I run various courses, speaker courses, mediumship courses, and of course, spirit art. One of the things I teach students is it the destination or is it the journey? Which is the most important to you? Because we can all sleep on a train. We can all go for a train ride, a 3-hour train ride, and we can sleep through that train ride, get to the end, and we're there. But think of all the beauty that we've missed along the way, all the animals that we might see, the beauty of the trees, all sorts of different things. And what about the person sitting across from us who's on their own, but this is the person perhaps who has a world of information waiting to give to us, but we don't even say hello because we're sleeping. But had we been awake, that person may have said hello. A conversation may have started. The knowledge that may have been passed over. But too many of us miss that because we want the destination before the journey. So the journey is something where we have to persevere on that. We have to do a drawing that doesn't look good again and again and again and again and again. We have to practice drawing at different times of the day, not just always the same time. Practice drawing in the morning, in the evening. I find that when I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, I come downstairs, I'm not fighting any thought. I'm picking up that pencil and I'm just drawing because my mind is still sleepy. Likewise, when it's time to go to bed, I'm not trying to fight anything. And that's probably where you'll get your most naturalness. And I've still kept a lot of those drawings that I look at it now and think, oh my God, those drawings are, they should never see the light of day. But I kept them to show people we all start somewhere. And if you don't start, then you'll never get where you want. So if you don't get on the train, you'll never get to the destination anyway. So pick up the pencil and draw.
Excellent advice. And tell us then, Anne, about auragraphs. What is an auragraph and how do we do those?
Oh, lovely jubbly, a lovely subject. Auragraphs, they are wonderful. Okay, auragraphs in a sentence is visual representations of the mood, life, personality of the recipient. So we're attuning to the auric field of the sitter, the recipient, and creating a visual interpretation of that as an auragraph. So if we separate the syllables, their aura being the auric field of the recipient, and the graph, we know graph as bar charts, line charts, but the graph is basically a visual timeline, if you like, of different aspects of the life of that recipient. And we choose whatever we feel represents that. So we could do a number, the number 18, the number 16, the number 12, whatever the number is. And that number could represent different things. It could be numerology, for example. We could do flowers. How many petal leaves are we drawing? That number could represent something. Are we drawing animals? Are we drawing an eye? Are we opening up to the consciousness? Are we becoming more aware? And we're looking at also the colors, the vibration from the colors, or the vibrancy, should I say, of the colors. The yellow, is it a pale yellow? Is it a medium yellow? Is it a real golden yellow? Blues, is it a pale blue? Is it a really dark blue? Blue's about communication, but also about healing. Yellow's about optimism, but also about education and growth and all sorts of different things. And so the auragraph, we normally would draw a circle to represent the circle of life. And around that circle, you would then start to draw images around that circle intuitively. So if I was going to draw for someone like yourself, you're sitting here with me now, I may draw a circle and I might start, straight away, and I'm getting the color of blue. I just feel like I want to put blue on this auragraph because it's representing to me communication. And because I want to do loads of blue on it and I want to do different shades of blue, you communicate with different people on a regular basis. Then I might want to add some red, the red representing the passion. But sometimes you get a little bit annoyed with yourself because, you haven't done things by the timeline you wanted to do. All sorts of different things I could put in there, and then I might put some steps or a ladder. So if I would put you on a ladder and you were in the middle, I may say that you're on the way up. There's still some steps to go. So I'd look at the rungs of the ladder. How many rungs do I have left? And that would give me maybe a timeline for you. Some people read the auragraphs from the bottom half being you when you were younger. And as we go around the auragraph to your teenage years, early adulthood, etc., to where you are now, there's certain ways that you can read the auragraph. But I try to train my students, teach my students, let it be organic, let it be intuitive, let it be inspiring the way that you get that information. Just let it flow. But what it would cover is the personality of the person, the recipient. It would cover their moods, their hopes, their likes, their aspirations. It would also represent the soul journey of that recipient. So you can talk to them on a soul-to-soul level. And so there's ways of creating that auragraph. There's ways of learning how to do certain artwork for it. And that's what I teach. I have auragraph workshops, and I just absolutely love it.
Oh my goodness, I'd love to do that. So the auragraph then, if you sit with your recipient and
Yes.
you draw your aurograph as you've just beautifully explained, and then you explain the aurograph to your recipient.
Yes, you give it the interpretation. You can, the best way if you've got a live sitter in front of you is to give them an interpretation as you go along. So
I
as
see.
you're drawing and as you're colouring in and you're giving them that interpretation of what you're doing, so they're enjoying the journey with you. If it was someone that I'm going to do an aurograph who's not present with me, I will paint the aurograph, because obviously I paint rather than draw it. So I'd paint the aurograph and then I would give a written interpretation, and that's usually a typed interpretation, and send it to them. So they would have it by email and send them, if they wanted it, by post as well. And there's different ways to do it. You know, you can work with watercolors, colored pencils. If you're going to use the canvas, you could use oils if you wanted to, but that's going to be the real expensive type to do it that way. Or I do a lot of my autographs digitally. So I hand draw, but using a digital surface to create them. Or I do the traditional, and I might use the watercolors, and it just depends. But they are so beautiful, and then they can hang them. You can hang them up. The one thing I like about doing the digital ones is that I can allow the recipient to print to their preferred size.
Of
Do you see?
course.
And then they can print
Yes.
multiple of them.
Yes.
That's why I prefer doing it. And as soon as I've completed it, they get it the same day, rather than I've completed it today. Well, you know, then I've got to find the right packaging to get it sent out. And so you might have another 5 days before you can get it. So there's all these sorts of things.
It seems like for me, who's not the most confident drawer yet,
Good.
um, the aurograph seems an easier way to begin for me, because you can draw symbols or colors or texture.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I run at least 4 to 5 different aurograph workshops a year. We've actually got one on tomorrow. And I'm actually going to move them towards video training, showing people how to do it. And actually, I'm also writing a book as well on that. And the idea is there are many different ways that people can start their art journey without feeling pressurized. Because when you do spirit portraiture, there's that pressure, isn't there? Supposing the person in front of me can't take it, can't take the drawing, or I'm not a fine artist, so it may not be good enough. But when you do the aurograph, there's only your interpretation. And so with that, I encourage all matchstick drawers to allow me to teach them. I love the matchstick drawers. I love those that the matchstick men and women drawers, those who cannot draw for toffee and all their drawings are very basic. Those are who I love to teach, because I was you. And my whole aspect is, let me help you become comfortable in your drawing. And I've got so much students who've left feedback on their art that they've done. I mean, I also teach people how to create and design their own oracle cards. That's another form of artwork. I also get people to do all sorts of different things. And I think for yourself, Anne, and for your listeners, autographs are a wonderful way, you know, of starting your journey. But there is this aspect of the freedom that it brings, you know, to be able just to put your stamp on it, and also with your sitter, give them some upliftment. Because whether it's mediumship, whether it's spirit portraiture, whether it's autographs or more, you're leaving your recipient with hope. You're leaving your recipient with upliftment. And if it's not for that, then what is it for?
That's so beautiful, Anne-Marie. Really beautiful. And of course, absolutely. And so when a final question.
Sure, no problem. I'm loving this.
Bless you. When we watch spirit artists, well, when I've seen spirit artists working in a demonstration of mediumship, there
Yes.
will be the medium doing mental mediumship,
Yes.
bringing forward communication from a spirit communicator.
Yes.
And next to them will be a spirit artist
Yes.
drawing portraits.
Yes.
So how does that work? How do you tune in? Are you tuning into the same spirit communicator as the mental medium, or are you tuning into your own spirit communicator? How does that work?
Well, that's another good question. I adore being a spirit artist when a medium is working, but I'm very choosy with my mediums. I have to be honest. I have to know that you understand what spiritual mediumship is, not to give psychic mediumship, two different things. And so when I've got a real good medium, it allows me to rest and relax my conscious self, to allow me to attune and blend with the communicator that they are speaking of. So what I tend to do is I let the medium begin. I've got a man here and I'm aware that this man passed, blah, 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 blah. And before he's got the yes, or she has got the yes, I will then spend that moment blending, tuning, seeing the same things that they're saying, feeling the same things they're saying, becoming aware of that communicator's energy. I'm now at one with that person. Then my hand does the rest. Then I'm no longer needed other than drawing. A number of times I have written something down, St. John's Cross or something or another, a motorbike. And the next sentence, the medium speaks, and you would understand that this gentleman rode a motorbike, or would you understand this cross, I believe St. John's. And that tells you that you are both attuned. And that happens if the right medium, that happens very well. So that's what I do. And then at the end, the medium may say, "And do you have anything to say?" And, you know, it's at that moment, it's not for me to go over everything the medium has just done, because obviously we're representing together and we've got a time span, because obviously we want to get around as many people as we can. So my job at that moment is to give significant pieces that maybe I've felt, seen, written down, etc. And then I will say that to the recipient, you'd also understand this. And hopefully, you know, they would say, yes, they can get it. And then we would offer out, do you understand the resemblance to the picture? I would say 7.5, 8 out of 10 people would normally recognize the communicator. But there are times when someone will say, nope, don't understand the picture. And that's absolutely fine, because I've done it long enough now not to be offended. You know, you think, gosh, what a cheek, no manners. How do you mean you don't know who this is? But the idea of that is I don't question the drawing anymore, because I know it's a good representation. I may question, is the person a lot younger than what they remembered? Is the person another communicator in spirit? But because we've been talking about this one person, that's where their mind is at. So when you open up, but would you understand this to be someone else in the spirit? Oh, yeah, because that looks like his brother. And that happens often. And so working with a medium, it's a wonderful place for me, because it's bliss. I can just attune and spend time with the spirit incarnate, but the spirit discarnate as well. And the last one we did, I was working with a couple of mediums actually, and we had 100 people in the audience. And I've never done this live before. I've done it plenty of times with me and spirit in our practice sessions. But the last portrait, they decided that was the best time in front of 100 people for me to draw with both hands at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, spirit. But I said that, and then straight away picking up the pencils, and I drew this picture of both hands at the same time. And yes, I can draw with my eyes closed, because in the training sessions we had, which I didn't mention earlier, when I used to get up at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, midnight, morning hours, they would often have me draw with my eyes closed. I can draw faces with my left hand. I can draw faces with my right hand. I can draw faces with my eyes closed. And a lot of my work is still done behind the curtains. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Certain work is not ready to be for the curtains to open. And I've been in this for a long time. So in that instance where they got me to draw with both hands, it was the curtains opening slightly. And so that's where I'm at. I know there's things down the line that's going to be produced. I've done artwork in trance, just me with spirit here. And I've done a beautiful flowers in a vase. And that's not ready to be shown publicly. That has to be worked. But it did, frighten is the wrong word. What it did, I was still in awe that spirit could work with me in that way. And although they want me to do that on a day-to-day basis, like they were telling me to do the oil paints, this has been for the last year, and I'm still pretending that I can't hear them when they're telling me to do that.
Funny.
So I feel like I need to be in the right headspace here, and I know it's coming. And they're saying, you can't hide this forever. So the next bit is to do the trance art, and we'll see what happens. It's that little girl in me that, I don't know. But, this is the thing. We're all learning, no matter the skill levels. That's why if you never pick up that pencil and you don't start, you will never get to a place. And I say to everyone, I couldn't draw for toffee. And now, yes, although it sounds strange to say it, I can draw. I don't know if I'll ever get comfortable with that, but I love it. And once you get gripped by the art, you just can't let that go. I remember having a dream, and this was about 4.5 years ago, just before the day before I went to a Mind Body Soul Festival. And I had this dream, and in this dream, the Grim Reaper, that's all I can say. It was basically a gentleman. He had this big fur coat, and he was standing in the front room, and behind him in the fireplace was a portal. And as you looked out of that portal, all you saw was the sea going up and down. And this gentleman said, "It's time." And I have a lot of lucid dreams. So I'm in a dream and I know I'm having a dream. And it felt so real. And I said to him, "I'm not ready." And he says, "You don't tell me when you're ready." And I was like, "I'm not ready to cross." And he said, "It's time." And I said, just give me 3 months, 3 weeks. Now I remember saying it because I can remember the dream vividly now. And I don't know what happened after that, but I woke up and I remember going downstairs. And at that time I had my easel up, and it had a blank canvas on there for weeks. I hadn't done anything with it. And as I was coming downstairs and had that thought, if I was to ever leave this physical world, the one thing that I would regret outside of, family and Mr. People was never picking up that pencil and drawing. And from that moment, I've never stopped. So all I can say to you, if you have that calling, if you have that sense of need, don't let fear stop you.
That is such a great story. So inspiring as well. And I know outside of the artwork, you hold a lot of free events online as well. Can you tell us what those events are?
Oh, absolutely. One of the events I will mention, and again, this is given to me by Spirit, and it's taken me 2 years to actually bring it to the table, as it were. And it's called the Assembly of Spirit Inspirations. It is the Spiritualist Speaker Service. And what that is about is a place where we can speak on spiritualism life, and there is no sign of mediumship, mental mediumship being demonstrated. It is pure philosophy, but it's got a modern twist to it. And the idea is to bring together a community, i.e. the assembly of Spirit Incarnate, where the assembly can be the bridge between the material world, those who awaken into it, and the bridge between the spiritualist churches, those that are too frightened, too scared to go into a church. One may be because of the stigma that they, tell their friends I've gone into a church, but also through some of those fears about the mediumship activity that takes place. And so by holding an assembly of spirit inspirations, it's part formal service, part open mic. So in the first half, we start with a greeting, let all the audience know what the assembly is about. But we also explain that the assembly is for those people that have been in the movement a really long time, that are no longer needing or searching for a message, but may need nourishment for their soul. It is also a place for trainee speakers to have somewhere that they can go to listen to seasoned speakers give their philosophy, but also in the open mic, they can jump in, and in the activities that I set for the audience, 2 minutes maximum per person, they're able to jump in and participate. And it's broken into 4 different parts. The first part being the formal service. So, for example, tomorrow I'm going to have Minister Colin Bates come in, and he's going to address the audience on 20, 25 minutes, unscripted, unrehearsed, inspiring. And he's going to give his talk. We have a spiritualist reader, and then we have a lady who sings live, a young girl, and her singing is absolutely beautiful. So she comes in, and then the second part, the open mic part, is about the audience interactivity, so that as one we can come together. And if I quote our last speaker, he said his soul has been touched. How beautiful is that? And then we have the last part. If you've never been to the assembly, I never tell people the last part, the last 10 minutes. That is the magic of it all coming together. And I never tell anyone what that activity is. They have to come in and experience it. And we run that twice a month, the second Sunday of the month and the last Sunday of each month. I have another host who runs the Monday night. So that's the assembly. It's free. It's online. People can come in. You can invite your parents. You can invite your co-workers, all the people that you may feel that would genuinely like to hear uplifting words without the demonstration of the activity of mediumship. The other one that I run, open platform, this is run the last Sunday of every month. I've been running this. I was one of the first few actually to run this when COVID started. And the open platform allows people to come in to share stories, to share poems, to share short spiritual readings. And then we have some music, and then we allow those who wish to demonstrate the physical activity of mediumship, they're welcome to come in. So those practice on their CSNU, their PAS, even working mediums also demonstrate, because we can all learn from each other. And so that's what we have. And that's also can be found on the portraitofspirit.com, or people can use Facebook and just search for the Assembly of Spirit Inspirations, and then they can join our group and get all of the information that way.
Oh, they sound like brilliant events.
Yeah, they are wonderful. I mean, we've got so many brilliant seasoned speakers in, and I'm not saying I'm a brilliant speaker, but I had to be a guest speaker as well for my own one, because I can't hold my own events and don't be the guest speaker. So it was quite nerve-wracking, actually. You know, I'm chairing the event, I'm also speaking as well, but it went down a treat. You know, you relax. I loved it. The audience is so welcoming, they're so loving, and everybody is just there to recharge their spiritual batteries and to nourish the soul. It's food for the soul. Too often we're walking around starving our soul. And if we want to enrich our soul, words can empower. Words can bring hope. Words can transform lives. And that's what the assembly is about. And that is generated from spirit. And so now I have a host who's running his own assembly of spirit inspirations in his own way. So it's the same structure, but he changes the music. We have different guest speakers. And next year, I'm hoping to have another 3 or 4. So people in different countries, different time zones can always have access to an assembly, because the people that live alone on their own may sometimes just need to be in a community of people, a gathering where voices can be spoken and they can participate and feel part of that gathering. And the idea is to prove that through words we can heal.
That is beautiful. Nourishment for the soul.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And you're a tutor at the Arthur Finney College. So I know that you've got all kinds of classes. So people that are listening, if they want to come and find out or come and attend one of your classes, how do they get in touch with you?
Okay.
How do they find out what you're doing?
Well, I'm a newly appointed tutor, so I'll just say that. I am going to be running I have been invited to be on a course in February. However, I run a lot of my own private courses. So if people wanted to find out what I'm doing and they wanted to find out how to get a workshop with me this weekend, next weekend, I'm running workshops mostly every weekend. If they go to theportraitofspirit.com, then they will get to my website. And if they navigate to the events and workshops page, then that lists all what's coming up.
Fabulous. And if somebody wanted to come and watch you working, either online, if you work online, or in person doing your drawing in a demonstration, how would they find that out?
They would just go to the diary section, because I tend to write down where I'm at.
Fabulous. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming and sharing all that with us. I'm sure everyone's going to be so inspired. I personally can't wait to get my one pencil out. I was going to say my box of paints. I'm like, oh, no, just one pen, isn't it?
One pencil. So I'll just say something else actually as well, because the art of drawing is really about, if you can sign your name, then you can draw. That's the bottom line. Drawing isn't a gift bestowed upon just one person. It is a skill that can be learnt, like the piano can be learnt. Some people may have more, I won't say more ability, but they may be more attuned to that. So someone who could play the piano quite well, they've had lessons, but they've just seemed to, like a duck to water, really take to it. Where other people, they could learn it and they could play, but maybe not as fluently. And that's the same with the art. You know, if you don't get started, you'll never know how fluent you can become. And so you must know that there are different levels, but you have to get started. I know we're speaking about art, and I know we're speaking about autographs, etc. But I also run speaker courses every Friday. And what they're about is helping people to find and understand their communication, to find their ability to have their voice heard, to give themselves the permission for their voices to be heard. And so I've written a book on that, The Spiritualist Address. I know it's not really about art, but the art is coming. So I'm going to have a book on psychic art autographs. I'm going to have a book on spirit portraiture, and that's all coming. So some of the books I've got out now are on Amazon, and they can find them on my website anyway. So just to let you know that I do a range of things. Art is my love. Teaching is my love. Merge them together. I know what my purpose in life is.
Anne-Marie Bond, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope your listeners get something from it as well. So
Anne-Marie Bond, everyone. What an inspiring lady she is. Don't you just feel totally inspired to go pick up a pencil and start working with the spirit world? And don't you just desperately want to go and do a workshop with Anne-Marie Bond? I know I do. All the resources for this episode, including a full transcript, laboriously typed by me. Don't forget to join Patreon Plus, importantly, how to reach Anne-Marie Bond are over on my website under podcasts. So do head over there and you can pick everything up on the show notes. www.anteato.com, ANNTHEATO.com. Do explore my website while you're over there. I've got some wonderful courses coming up that you might enjoy, and there are some great meditations on there too that you might like. Now, this is important. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. You can do that on your favourite podcast listening platform. Just press the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Something very, very interesting is happening with Psychic Matters for the month of November. I have a very special guest joining us. I mean, all my guests are very special, but this chap is giving us his time for the entire month of November. Who is it? I hear you ask. Ha ha! You will have to tune in to find out. Don't forget to subscribe. You really don't want to miss out on this fascinating upcoming mini series. Have a great couple of weeks, everyone. Let's all give our communal thanks to Anne-Marie Bond for so willingly sharing her knowledge on spirit portrait art with all of us. I'm sure you are all hugely inspired, so pick up that pencil, just the one, remember, and ask Spirit to guide your hand. My name is Anne Teato, and thank you so much for listening to Psychic Matters.